Why are you here today? That is the question I was greeted with on my first critical trip as a president of Bishop-Wisecarver. I was meeting with my bearing supplier in Japan. I was there because I needed to cancel a PO. Actually, the first time our company had ever done this with our supplier. Let me just say it was a rough start, but I'm going to finish that story in a little bit. And I want to tell you a little bit more about myself and my company before we get there. So let me start with the family. This is a picture of my dad and I. He's currently 91. And I am the youngest of 4 children. I have 3 older brothers. They're 7, 10, 12 years older than I. We have all worked in the company. At one time, we all worked there at the same time, and it was bad. I am now the only child actively involved in the company, and I'm the majority owner. I still have 2 brothers as minority owners. On the left side, you see my dad, Bud Wisecarver. Bishop-Wisecarver was started when he joined with Ray Bishop, and they formed the company back in 1950, so we're on our 69th year. We are primarily a manufacturer of industrial B2B products. We've made quite a few products over the years. We also did a lot of custom fabrication for manufacturers in Northern California. Our product now is linear and rotary actuators, and I can talk to you about that later, about what that actually means, because normally people's heads spin a little bit about that. But bottom line, we help things move up and down and around. I came to the company April 1st of 1991. Yes, April Fool's Day. Many people remind me of that. And after 9 years, I was made president of the company. So here's my goal today. What if having a daughter take over the family business was no longer newsworthy? Let's look at some of the numbers. I think we should be really proud in this room about what we do for the global economy. Private and family-owned businesses drive 70 to 90% of the global GDP, and we employ 50 to 80% of the workforce. There's good news. Women-owned businesses since 2007 have been increasing at a rate of 58%, and 25% of family businesses are now led by a woman CEO or president. And in emerging countries, 60% of the companies at least have a woman on the executive team. But my heart belongs to engineering. And in my space, the numbers are not so good. Less than 30% of the workforce is made up of women. About 20% are on the executive team, and only 5% are on the CEO or president level. But the data is in our favor. Research show that financial performance greatly increases when women are part of the executive team, especially if they're in the CEO or president role. And studies also show that the more women that are on a board of director group, the higher the revenue and earnings. So the numbers are great. So what I put together for you all today is, when you're considering the succession plans for your company, is 5 principles about what you can do to help prepare not just your son, but your daughter to take over the business. And I have to say, my dad didn't have a succession plan. In fact, I tell people we're actually a case study on how not to do succession. But I have to say, in putting this together today, I realized that he naturally actually followed quite a few of these principles, and that boded well for me. It really prepared me to take over the family business. So the first principle is to talk all sides of the business with your kids as they're growing up. My dad had a hard and fast rule: 6 o'clock, dinner on the table, and your butts in the seat. We all ate dinner together every night as a family. Even if he had to work late, he came home, ate dinner with us, and went back to the shop. That's actually what we call the business, is the shop. And that's what we talked about as a family every single night. We talked shop. And he talked about what was happening in the business that day, if a machine broke down, if we got a new customer, if he was working on designing a new product. That's what we talked about every single night around the table. All of us, myself and my brothers. And I never really thought much about it. And I had a friend come over for dinner, and I was outside after dinner with her, waiting for her mom to pick her up, and she looked at me and she said, "You know, your family talks about weird stuff at dinner." And I hadn't really ever thought about that, you know. I mean, to me, it was kind of natural. I mean, I had been spending time out at the business. I spent a whole summer out there. I mean, I have to say, the business side, the office side, was really more, you know, my thing than being out in production. But I worked production for a summer. But what I realized is my dad was really fueling that fire in myself to be a leader and to take over a company, which leads me to the second principle, is that you need to encourage their interests and studies and jobs, especially outside of the family business. So for me, I was the normal horse-crazy young girl, and then I got on a thing of volcanoes, and then I really latched on to chemistry. I loved chemistry, which is probably why I like baking, because they're pretty similar. And so I ended up going to the University of Arizona because I was going to be a pharmacist, because I actually thought that was a lot of chemistry. But life happens, and so I ended up actually graduating with a BS in retail business with a double minor in cultural and linguistical anthropology. I know, that says manufacturing president all over it. But it actually really served me well, because I took that and I went to work for Carter Halley Hale in one of their department store divisions, and I became actually one of the youngest buyers ever for that division. And I loved it. I loved it because that job was like running your own business. It wasn't just about purchasing the goods. I did the marketing plans. I was working on visual and display. And in my division, I had 22 stores. So I was interacting with 22 store managers. I had 22 department managers, working with them how best to display and sell the product. And it was fabulous. But I was starting to feel that pull to the vendor side. As I was working with my vendors, I was feeling, you know, I really would rather be making the goods and working in that business than selling the goods. And about that time, I was starting to realize that my division was most likely going to go bankrupt. And so I had a conversation with my dad, and he said, you know, we have this project at work, and nobody wants to do it. Will you come do it? And I'm thinking, well, okay. There was actually a lot of M&A happening in retail at the time and a lot of disruption, and I thought, okay, I'll go help Dad out. I'll go do this project. I'll let retail settle out, and I'll come back to the vendor side. Because I had really good relationships. I actually had offers from all my vendors at the time already to go work for them. But I thought, you know, I'm going to go help Dad out. And it was a great decision. I went there, and for one, I realized I do really love the making of things. I love to make things. And it was great to be in an environment where you could walk out the office doors, out to production, and I could touch and feel the product that we were making for our customers. And it was even more special because almost all of it is my dad's design. It's his invention. But what I also saw when I walked through those doors at Bishop-Wisecarver was a telex machine and inventory being done on Cardex files. And so I realized my work here is not done. So one of the first things I decided to do was to build a website for the company after that first project was done. And so how did my experience help me here? I was really lucky in that Carter Halley Hale was a beta site for IBM. So I did my job at the time completely online, completely on a computer. And you're probably looking at me and thinking, well, that's no big deal. Well, back in the 80s, it was a big deal. Now, it was a black screen with green type, but I did my whole job online. And what I realized is that that was really the way the world was going to go. And so when I came to work for my dad, I figured this is what we have to have. If we're going to survive and project an image that's bigger than what we are, we really need this. Well, I wasn't really met with much enthusiasm over this idea. I was told, no one's going to use the internet. Actually, no one's going to need a website. And industrial B2B definitely won't ever have websites. But one of the things I'm really good at is taking data and patterns and putting them together. And so I put a pretty compelling pitch together. And as you can see, I won. And as you can see, we were very early to the internet. For those of you who remember, you could only have 3 letters when the internet first started, which is why we have a 3-letter URL. And I love that because I think it really shows that we are a pioneer in technology and leveraging technology. But what it set up was the fact it was really setting up my lane versus my dad's lane. And so it allowed us to have different skill sets and not compete. I was really becoming known in the business for doing the marketing, the technology, operational process. My dad, he's the inventor, he's the engineer, he was doing the manufacturing. And so we were able to really coexist. And I think there's also a thing with daughters where we have an admiration and respect for our dads, and we're not really trying to compete so much head to head. And for me, I really love the story of the family business and promoting that. So even though we had our own lane, the one thing we definitely shared, and we've heard a lot about it today, was the values, and that we really need to teach our values every single day. This is my team on the top right, and there's me with a bunch of students at Pittsburg High School. So the one thing I saw clearly is that Bud-Wisecarver at work was the dad I saw at home, and he had a really strong principle about doing the right thing. In fact, that included when he talked to customers saying, "Oh, well, you don't want to use our product. You want to use this one instead." And the engineers would kind of cringe, but he was really firm on, we're not out here to make a sale, we're here to sell our product when it's the right product for that solution. And that really builds credibility and trust, and he was great at that. And he was also really involved in school, maybe because he himself was not a great student, but he was very involved in our local schools. In our community college, he started a machining program that he run for machinists. He was involved in the economic development of our city. And when I came to the company, I shared those same values as him. And so I got involved in STEM-based education, as you can see here, especially when it promotes girls. I was appointed by the governor to the State Workforce Development Board, and I became really passionate getting involved with FIRST Robotics. And so we've been a national sponsor of FIRST Robotics for, I think, 11 years now at the Kid Aparts, and we also sponsor local teams. So those values really are deep. And we also have the values, as we do here as Evergreen companies, in our employees. And one of the things my dad felt was definitely the right thing to do was to offer health care. And this is before it was legislated. We are the longest continuous supply or offer of Kaiser Healthcare in the East Bay. And I'm really proud of that. And even today, my broker every year, she's like, you know, I can save you money. And I say, hey, no, because that's not what we're at. Even today, with the cost of medical, we pay 90% of the healthcare expense for our employees. And I'm really proud of that. So the next principle is to provide both strong male and female mentors for your daughters. And I'm really lucky. I've had fabulous mentors throughout my life. And I think they're really important to have those mentors outside of the family. That you have someone that's guiding you, they're teaching you how to collaborate and communicate and delegate, but they're also pushing you. They're pushing you into areas you might not feel comfortable, but that gives you confidence to go out and grow. I was really lucky that one of my earliest mentors was my high school chemistry teacher. And he really saw how much I loved chemistry. And he embraced it and he fostered it. He made me his TA. Like I said, I felt so confident in it. I went off to school to be a pharmacist because I thought it would be like, chem lab and titrating all the time with the drugs. Didn't realize it was actually a whole bunch of biology. So that way it didn't really work for me. But I realized he really gave me a gift because we hear a lot about STEM-based education now and girls in STEM, but that wasn't happening when I went to high school. And so he was just really doing it because it was the right thing. And so I'm really thankful for that. My other mentor is my grandma Wisecarver. So this is Constance. We called her Cookie. She was a pretty sweet lady, but she was one tough cookie as well. That's me at 3 years old. You can see how much I loved her, and that's my middle brother, Paul. And so Cookie was born in 1888, and she lived to be 101. And she was a really amazing woman, very, very independent for a woman at that time, in that generation. She became a nurse. She bought her own way on a ship to go to France to be a nurse in World War I. She went behind enemy lines and nursed soldiers. As you can see, she got cited for bravery. She was wicked smart. She played bridge almost every day till she was 100. She did the New York Times crossword puzzle every day in pen. started at the left-hand corner and finished. She had an amazing memory. Once she met you, you got a birthday card and Christmas card for the rest of your life. And she really showed me how to be a strong, independent woman. When she came back from the war, in fact, she continued to work, and she got married so late in life for that time that the newspaper ran a headline that the spinster Constance Cook is to be married. It made news. So, but you know, she was always a lady, no matter how tough and independent she was. The pearls, the dress, and the hose, that's all she wore, even at camp in Yosemite, in the dirt. That's what she wore. So I was really lucky to have a role model like her. The last principle is to establish a meritocracy, because that's what this is really about. It shouldn't be about gender. It shouldn't be about your birth position in the family. It should be about your skill sets and expertise. And this is one thing where my dad was pretty tough with me. He was always pushing me to do better and to actually keep up with my brothers, who, you know, were pretty significantly older than I. And he had a rule about do what you love and it's not work. And so he was always pushing us, if you do what you love, then you'll work hard at it. And if you work hard on it, you're going to become an expert and the success would come. And so that really pushed me to excel and go out. And I think that's where we have leverage as family-owned businesses, because the average tenure of a public CEO is, the data says 9 years. I have to think nowadays it's shorter than that. But the average tenure of a family CEO is 20. And what that gives you is that time for your kids to go out and follow their path, get the experience outside of the company, follow their own education, and then that bodes well for the company, because we all know business is moving really fast now. Technology is changing, the globalization, and so when you're looking to your next generation, you shouldn't be looking for a copy of yourself. You need to be looking for those skill sets that's going to take the business to the next level. And you have the time to do that when you're in a family-owned business. So let's go back to that first question. Why are you here today? He actually followed it up with, why isn't the older brother president? Why isn't middle brother president? Why isn't younger brother president? Why are you president? I honestly don't remember how I answered all those questions, but I achieved my mission. I got the purchase order canceled, which was really critical because it wasn't about the fact that we didn't need the inventory. We actually had no money. When I took over, we had no money. We couldn't pay for that PO. I don't know how I answered that, but I achieved my mission. I got the purchase order canceled, which, like I said, we didn't need the inventory, but we couldn't pay for it. But here's what I do know. I don't like how those questions made me feel. And I don't wish that for your daughters or your sisters or any of your female colleagues to have to go through a such situation like that. So here's my last question to you. What if it's 15 years from now and we're back in this beautiful setting, we're here at Tugboat? I want to ask you, who's going to be in your seat? Who will be in my seat? My wish is that it's the child with the best skill set and the best expertise, period. Thank you.